This week's Torah portion, Parashat Devarim, begins one of the greatest farewell speeches in history. The Israelites stand on the edge of the promised land. Moses stands with them, but he will not cross the Jordan. Imagine what must have been going through his mind. After a lifetime of leadership, the finish line is finally in sight, yet Moses knows he will never reach it. What is he supposed to do? What is he supposed to say? The transition will not be easy. In fact, the Israelites are preparing for war. So Moses begins his final address to the people. And he wants to make sure that they remember exactly what it took to arrive at this moment. Hoping to inspire the Israelites, Moses retells the stories of their military victories as they traveled through the desert. Most notably, he describes defeating King Og of Bashan. King Og is famous in the Torah for being a literal giant. And Parashat Devarim even tells us the dimensions of his bed frame to get across just how huge this guy was. It says the bed frame was 9 cubits long. Anyone still use cubits? That's 13 and a half feet in modern measurements. So this was a big guy. And it's no accident that Moses chooses to remind the Israelites of King Og's defeat. It's a purposeful callback to a moment in their history when giants loomed very large in the people's fears. Almost 40 years prior to this moment, the generation that left Egypt was about to enter the Promised Land. Their scouts came back with reports of Anakites, a tribe of giants that lived in enormous cities with sky-high walls. And the scouts warned the people, saying, "We looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them." The very sight of these giants was enough to shatter the Israelites' self-confidence. They lost faith in God, and they saw themselves as small, incapable, weak. And we know how the story goes. God punished them for their lack of faith and condemned them to wander for 40 years. Flash forward to the battle with King Og. The Talmud expands this episode and gives us some wild details. It says that when Og realized the Israelite camp was about 9 miles from end to end, he decided to throw a whole mountain at them. No big deal. But the Talmud goes on, and it says, King Og went and uprooted a mountain and brought it on his head. And God brought grasshoppers upon the mountain, and they pierced through it, causing it to fall on King Og's neck. When the Israelites were faced with destruction, God sent grasshoppers. Grasshoppers. And we could read this as a classic miracle. We know God loves using locusts and the like to get things done. But we can also read this as a metaphor for a change that has happened in the Israelite psyche. Early in their journey, seeing themselves as grasshoppers meant seeing themselves as insignificant. But in this story, the tiny grasshopper is the thing that brings the giant to his knees. And if we read the grasshoppers here as a symbol for the Israelites themselves, a new picture emerges. And it's an honest picture. The Israelites are literally small when compared to giants. But it's also a more complete picture. The Israelites can do anything, even if they feel like grasshoppers. So let's jump back to the present moment in Parashat Devarim. Moses takes in the crowd of Israelites, and they're about to face a complete unknown. And he remembers the scouts. The giants they saw on their first mission into the land of Canaan were real, and they were terrifying. But the scouts let their fear change the story they told themselves. An immense challenge became something completely impossible. In a word, they were paralyzed. And now it could happen again. But it doesn't have to. As I read Parashat Devarim this year, I was drawn to the idea that Moses could be speaking directly to us. The world is a really scary place right now. There are so many giants. Illness, grief, conflict, uncertainty, fear for the safety of our families, fear for what might happen to our planet, and these things are real. There's no point in pretending they're not. But we have to ask ourselves, what are the stories we tell ourselves when we're afraid? That there's no point? I'm not good enough. Nothing will ever change. I'm too old or too young. I'm just a grasshopper. We all have these moments. But if we dig deep, we find that when we have been faced with paralyzing fear, and we all have, there has been an inner strength to draw on that lets us get through it. How else could we have gotten here? The problem is that fear makes us forget our own stories. Fear makes us forget the days we never thought we'd get through, but we did. Fear makes us forget the pain we thought would overwhelm us, but it didn't. When Moses recounts the victory over the giant king Og, he's helping the Israelites remember a moment when they were convinced they could not do something, and they did it anyway. Moses knows he will not be around to lead the Israelites into the future. And he knows that fear can warp the Israelites' sense of who they are and what they're capable of. But Moses also knows that strength can be found in the memories of challenges that they have already overcome. They have defeated giants, even though they were scared. So when he gets the opportunity to give the Israelites one final lesson before they cross into Canaan, he doesn't have to tell them anything they don't already know. He just has to remind them. So we might ask, what would Moses say to us if he knew the giants we were facing? He might remind us of our own stories. He might remind us of the times when we were scared and drew on wells of inner strength. And it's not that there's nothing to be scared of. We know that there is. It's that sometimes we just forget we can handle it. So our task today is to take this lesson from Parashat Devarim and make it real. We don't have Moses cheering us on, but we do have each other. We must be the ones to remind each other of our inner strength. We must lift each other up. We must remind one another that our community is powerful. Not because we are never afraid, but precisely because our stories prove we can be afraid and keep moving forward. We might occasionally feel like grasshoppers. But Parashat Devarim reminds us that grasshoppers can defeat giants. Shabbat Shalom.